to episode number 91 of the KH-Vids podcast. This week we're going to be talking about video games being used as educative tools. I don't know. It's going to be a fun topic, though, because it's always a fun topic here on the KH-Vids podcast. So this week you have with us, of course, myself, Misty.
And me, Libra GKD.
And me, Kalaxon.
And as our staff guests, we have two, and they are...
Hey, it's Kat.
Hi, it's Stardust.
Yep, so we have a woman-filled podcast today, minus Nick, and that's just really excited for me, just to have a lot of estrogen going on in here. So first off, we are talking about Kingdom Hearts news and updates, which we actually have something tiny and little and meager, but it's something. So Square Enix Germany posted a Kingdom Hearts teaser to their Facebook page. They took it down a couple hours later, like maybe a day later, and it said nothing explicit in the first place, but it featured an image taken from Kingdom Hearts Chi, and it leads us all to wonder if Chi is in the process of being localized, and whether we might see an announcement at a certain gaming conference that's coming up.
What if they just used an image and not realizing it was from Chi?
That, of course, is a possibility. But the fact that it was...
wait, this is from a game that isn't out here.
True. The fact that it was taken down, though, it leads me to believe that they maybe jumped the gun a little bit, or maybe I'm just being hopeful.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons things could be taken down.
Yeah.
Yeah, in any case where it's not like an explicit statement from Square, it could all boil down to us overanalyzing anything because of how long it's been taking for news to actually happen.
But then I have no sympathy for Square because that's their fault anyway.
I don't either. I mean, I don't have sympathy for companies in general.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, it could happen. We've had a lot of, like, rumored news about Chi being localized lately, and this is just, like, another drop in the well, I guess. That was a weird metaphor. I don't know. But, so it just adds to our possibility of Chi being localized. And, you know, we would all like to see that, of course, especially because it seems to have very strong ties to what will eventually happen in Kingdom Hearts 3. So we'll see where that goes, and if we'll get further news on that front. Like I said, E3 is coming up, and I mean, I don't know if they would announce a Chi localization at E3.
Probably not, unless it's, like...
I could only see them doing it if they were bundling it with, like, PS4 editions of the HD remasters, but otherwise, yeah, I don't think so.
Otherwise that, or if it does happen to be that smartphone thing, they would just include it in, like, a sizzle reel of, like, here's all the smartphone stuff we're working on.
True. But I always thought that the first reveal of the smartphone thing would be at the D23 Expo, but then that begs the question of why would Square Enix Germany be posting this in May when they weren't going to be announcing this until November? But, I mean, who knows? It's Square. We never can find out what is happening with Square. Okay, so on to our topic for the week. There hasn't been a lot of gaming news, so this is kind of a silly topic.
It's the lull before the storm.
Yeah, it is. It's the calm before the storm. But it was inspired because I've been playing this game Never Alone, which was offered for the PS4 through PlayStation Plus last month. And it's a really interesting little game, and it's kind of used as an educative tool. So that's what we're talking about today. And you don't have to have played the game. We're going to be talking about it in other capacities as well, but that's where it came from, I guess. So Never Alone is this cute little indie game, and it's a story about I'm going to say this wrong, Iñupiat girl named Nuna and her Arctic fox companion. You control both of them. It's a simple kind of 2D puzzle platformer thing, and it has like this really cool atmosphere. It incorporates elements of Alaskan indigenous stories. Like at the point that I am right now, you're dodging the Northern Lights, like monsters. They're called the Rolling Heads, as they like try to attack you as you're platforming. You have to deal with like puzzles created by the little people. Really, really neat stuff from Alaskan, I guess, culture. And as you go along in the game, you unlock these things called cultural insights, which are these short little videos that feature indigenous people, and they talk about, you know, like them growing up, and they share their culture stories and customs and music and art, and it's really, really neat. And I love it that it is, presenting a game that is a simple concept of a 2D platformer, but it's being used to teach people about different cultures. And it's really exciting for me, and I'm really enjoying the game. So that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, it's a game that I've always kind of had an interest in. I haven't played it yet. I've been kind of doing other things, but it is on my to-play list. Just the look of the game and just kind of the pitch behind the game has always interested me. So I'm kind of excited to play it finally.
Right. It was made interactively with the like a council that oversees like the indigenous people in Alaska. So it's not just like people making a game about Alaskan mythology without having any particular ties to it. It does have very strong ties to Alaskan mythology, and I read that it is supposed to be part of a series that shares and celebrates different cultures. So hopefully, we will be seeing this adapted to like other cultures as well.
Yeah, I was reading that as well. They were this was their first foray into kind of a new type of game,
right,
where they kind of explore different cultures and stuff like that, which that sounds great, because as far as I know, Never Alone actually did pretty well, at least well enough that they were, they're happy with its performance, and it's
right.
also won a bunch of awards, and like it won a BAFTA award and for the best like new game for that year, so it seems to be well received, which was good. So
and it's a fun game. I mean, it's short. It's definitely short. So far, I can tell that I think it's like 8 chapters, and you kind of blow through them kind of quickly. But it is a really cool concept, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. And I love the idea of games as educative tools, not just because I'm an education major, but because, I played games growing up, and having a game, it's more appealing, I think, to most kids than like opening up a book and reading about Alaskan culture, because it lets you personally interact with it. And I think that it creates not only an interest in it, but sort of a deeper tie to the stories. So I remember like a couple years ago reading an article about people putting like PSPs in classrooms and seeing where to go with that. And I was kind of skeptical about it, because not only was this like before indie gaming became so accessible, but it didn't seem right to me. But games like Never Alone are definitely giving me hope for video games to be used as educative tools in classrooms or just at home. And I'm really excited by the prospect of that.
Yeah. I mean, even if it's not in like an actual like education tool, it's still a good way to learn, like,
yes,
about things that you probably would have, like, without Never Alone, would you ever really think to read or learn about like the indigenous culture in Alaska? Like,
I mean, I might, because I'm a big nerd, but
that is
like,
also true.
Most people.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'd also probably might for a variety of reasons, but like for the average person, it's like, yeah, it's just a game, and they happen to learn stuff while they're playing the game. They're not getting the game necessarily to learn things, but it's kind of a side effect, I guess you can say.
And that's why I was especially excited to see it offered through PlayStation Plus, because, again, it would be that you have to go out and look for it if you're going to just buy it, but it being offered through PlayStation Plus opens it to a much broader audience, I think.
Yeah, because, I mean, I know a lot of people who are not satisfied with PlayStation Plus, but besides that, there are just like, it's free, I guess I'll download it, and if I play it, I'll play it, if not, not.
Well,
but
I mean, now that you need it for multiplayer access, I think
more
and more people...
Well, I mean more, because I know there are people who just download things even if they have no clue what it is.
I at least like, purchase them and try it,
same, yeah, same here. Like, so it gives it a much more bigger audience, because you got people who probably had no interest or probably haven't even heard of it, and now they have it on their system,
right,
or they have it in their history or something, because it's like, why not? What harm does it do?
And I have been reading some people saying that, like, Never Alone is a disappointing offering because it's not challenging or anything, but I kind of like that it's fairly simple to play through, because I think that opens it up to children. Not to say that children are stupid and need to play dumbed down games, but that, you could put, virtually like a 6-year-old in front of this game. They could learn about Alaskan culture, and then they could, learn and play and get through the game and not have to stop because it's too hard for them. And it's not even strictly just about culture as well. I think that games can be used in a lot of different ways to teach. That another game that's been offered through PlayStation Plus recently is The Unfinished Swan, which plays like a children's storybook. And I'm not that far into it, or I don't think I'm that far into it, but I'm told it's also very short. But
yes.
Yeah, it's like 3 chapters or something, and I just finished chapter 2 last night, so maybe I am pretty far into it. But as far as I can tell, it's a story about a little boy whose mother died, and him kind of dealing with that. And that's another, I would argue, method of education, teaching them, dealing with grief and that kind of thing. And it's another game that isn't particularly challenging mechanically or gameplay-wise, but that makes it more accessible, I guess, to a broader audience.
Yeah, I mean, Unfinished Swan in particular is pretty neat, especially because it has at least in the very beginning, because it opens up a little once you get to a certain point. But in the very beginning, it had kind of its own unique challenge of you're not entirely sure
what you're doing.
Yeah, what you're doing.
You're just put into this like white area. There's this little circle in the screen, and you just have to like figure it out. And it doesn't take
when we
you
say white,
particularly long.
when we say white, it doesn't.
It's all white. It's flat white.
Like you think it's just.
I thought the game was broken or something.
Yeah, I mean, in the very beginning areas where you're supposed to like paint your way out of this area because everything is just completely white and you have no idea where anything is. And it's a unique challenge in that respect because that's not something you normally like try to figure out.
Yeah, it's just like figuring out what to do, which I feel like is another great way that games do teach that, puzzle games, adventure games especially, it's teaching people to think out of the box. And if you grew up playing adventure games, I would argue that you maybe have really good problem solving skills.
Yeah, especially, yeah. Yeah, because I mean, those adventure games, especially in the 90s, they got kind of insane with you need to think outside of the box.
I know that we have somebody here who really likes adventure games from the 90s.
I'm not sure if those have helped me with problem solving skills.
I mean, if we're going to talk about game specialties and people are going to start bringing up puzzle games, like, yes, hello, it is I. I play way too many for my own good. And actually, it kind of helps me with, like, thinking, with, like, quick thinking, because with a lot of the stuff that's timed especially, you have to be able to move fast, and you have to be able to, like, come up with solid solutions, especially with, like, Tetris, which, as some people know, I play way too much. Like, you have to be able to make up for poor decisions and think ahead. You have to be able to think, like, 10 steps ahead. And so, in that respect, it's really helpful and educational.
Yeah.
I just like puzzle games in general. They're kind of
also that.
I've never been particularly good at puzzles, so I've always kind of avoided puzzle games, which is probably counterintuitive because you get better at puzzles by doing more puzzles. But yeah, so I think that is a big thing that games have to be appreciated for, that, in terms of teaching reflexes and, like Kat said, like making up for bad decisions or mistakes, or just thinking creatively, like especially with adventure games, there's adventure game logic and then there's like real people logic, and adventure game logic is out of this world and crazy and weird, but I think that there's something to be said that this isn't the way that most people would think about going about solving this problem, but it's good to practice that and get the mind juices flowing.
That's a very elegant way of putting it.
Thank you. And, it's not just games like the Reader Rabbit series, which I played a lot as a child, and Gus Goes to Cyberopolis. That's, like, I think what comes to most people's mind when they say, like...
Like, it's specifically there to entertain, to educate you.
Yeah, in a kind of entertaining way, quote unquote. Yeah. And, I played a lot of those games as a child, so I'm not knocking them, but I think that it's easier for kids, or maybe more appealing to kids, when it's not branded as, like, learn how to do well in 3rd grade, if they're not huge nerds.
Like, you have to trick them into learning.
Yeah.
Which... that always works. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think I attribute a lot of my current intelligence to playing education games as a child.
I don't... it was weird when I was a kid. I played a lot of I had a lot of different of those type of games.
Treasure Cove.
Yes, Treasure Cove. Treasure Cove and Treasure Mountain.
Yeah,
which those I still have CD copies of those, and
I kind of want to install them on my computer and play through them.
I need to set up a DOS box on my computer, because it advertised working on like Windows 3.1 or whatever that thing is, and I don't have that, so I need to.
Some of the adventure games, like Pajama Sam, or like those. I know a lot of those work on Scum VM, actually, which is to emulate
those. But yeah, it's like I have a lot of those still. Actually, I think my typing skills are good because I had Marvin Beacon's Teaches Typing.
Mavis Beacon?
Mavis Beacon, yes, Mavis. It's been a while since I played it. But I spent so much time just typing those little games that they have in there, and then I'm just like,
I played this game called Type to Learn 3 in elementary school, and it was weird. There was like this weird like Santa Claus guy who time traveled, and you had to get him to time travel better by typing. And so that's how I learned to type. And it was always, like in computer class in elementary school, like you would play this game, and after you completed a certain amount, you were allowed to like go on the internet and play on like Yahooligans, which another story for another time, the internet in the 90s. But and I always just kept playing Type to Learn because I loved it so much. Yeah, and I loved typing.
We had that type of course as well, where you just kind of typed when it was like a general like computer course.
Yeah.
Where it always opened with, hey, here's like 20 minutes of typing.
Yeah, but I like that it's taken on a bit of a more artistic way of teaching kids through gaming in recent years with games like Never Alone. Now, Never Alone is definitely not the first game to be steeped in kind of mythology and ancient stories. There's like, obviously, God of War, there's Okami, there's that other game that was offered through PlayStation Plus recently that I don't remember the name of.
Oh.
It was like Greek mythology or something.
Apotheon.
Right, yeah. But none of those to me were really educational, especially God of War, that has very little to do with actual Greek mythology.
Though I will have to say I learned a lot about various minor figures from there because they just kind of include them as a throwaway type thing because
definitely.
we need stuff in here, and it's like, that's kind of tangentially related.
If only, like games like Kid Icarus are kind of like that too, where they just kind of like throw these characters in. They don't really have a lot to do with the mythological stories, but if somebody really likes the game, they might, go back and look into these things.
Like another good example of this, because I can't go a podcast without mentioning this, is the Persona series, where your personas that you have, they're all supposed. What personas are supposed to be like this kind of like concept of the human like thought, like so like you summon personas that are from various mythologies. It could be they have stuff from Greek mythology, from Japanese mythology, Indian mythology, Christian mythology, and it's all just these mythological figures, and they have really nothing to do with anything, but you kind of learned about them, and you kind of like you're used to saying like, oh, this is, for example, Loki, and it's like you spend enough time with them, you start recognizing Loki, and then you kind of sometimes go off and like kind of learn about them, I guess, because you spend so much time using them and learning about them, and it's just kind of a neat little thing.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I think that a lot of things do draw on like Greek mythology and Japanese mythology just because Japanese games are really popular. And so that's why I was very excited about Never Alone, because you never hear about Alaskan mythology. And that's why I really want to keep an eye on Upper One Games, which is the developer behind Never Alone, because I hope that they will focus on kind of the lesser known cultures and mythologies and bring those, I mean, maybe not too popular interest, but inform people about them and let you learn about them. Because it's awesome. It really is. I cried during some of the cultural insights that I watched in Never Alone just because it was so neat to see these people like speaking about their culture and learning about it. I don't know. I'm really taken with this game.
Yeah, it's a type of game that I kind of hope, as well, they've already said that they've have plans for
a series,
a series of different type of games that are kind of like this, where it's kind of taking kind of cultural heritage of stuff and kind of presenting it in a game.
Right.
Yeah, I'm as I mentioned, I haven't played it yet, but I've been looking forward to it.
It's really cute. I mean, it does have local co-op. I'm not saying that as like a selling point. I mean, if you're looking for a co-op game, sure, play Never Alone. It's free, but you know.
Yeah, don't you just it because you switch between the girl and the fox,
right?
Correct?
Yes, you do, and it's easy to do it in single player mode, and you're not doing it so often that it makes for like really interesting local co-op. But on the other hand, like the gameplay of Never Alone isn't super interesting in the first place. It's more about the atmosphere and the cultural elements and learning about the culture. And the story is really cute. It's like a classic Alaskan story, apparently, but it's really adorable, and I really love it. I do think that there's also a passive teaching of skills in games, too, that, just simple things like reading can be taught through games. And, especially like growing up in the 90s, like most of us did, a lot of games did not have voice acting or voiceovers.
Final Fantasy.
Yeah. But so you have to read text boxes, and that's still true of a lot of like mobile and portable games. And I think that too is really important. That's just teaching kids how to read.
Yes. Like I actually I do think that, because like there is, especially in, as you mentioned, the 90s, and especially RPGs, when there's just a lot of text and a lot of just more text, it's just something that you kind of have to learn how to read, or else you're just kind of, unless, especially when you're at that, when you're that young, you're sort of just interested in kind of knowing what's going on. Mm-hmm. Particularly in RPGs, because like it's not actiony usually. Mm-hmm. You're kind of there for the story, so you kind of have to learn how to read. And there's a lot of times when I was growing up where they've used words that I was not familiar with. So there's a lot of me asking, or me either asking or going on the computer and looking up definitions of words.
Going on the AOL.
Yes,
and
I actually had Earthlink.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah, but I think that's definitely true. And like one of the first games that I really played as a kid was Pokemon Silver, and you have to read a lot in Pokemon games. Like there is no voiceover or anything.
There's no way around it.
No, there really isn't. Down to like the simple mechanic of fighting. It's you have to select fight from the menu and then select a move and know what the moves do just by reading it. And I mean, not saying that is what taught me to be a good reader, because I also read a lot as a child. But, again, a lot of kids are adverse to picking up a book and reading. And I like and hope that games teach them how to read in a more appealing way.
Because books apparently aren't cutting it.
No, apparently not.
Yeah.
But, to draw another comparison to books, games also get really deep, especially recently, with storytelling and characters and themes that, you can critically analyze them in the same way that you do books. And that's great from an academic perspective and looking at video games from an art form. But I also think it's great for kids who, again, might not want to pick up a book and talk about things like theme and plot and setting, but make them play a game and then say, like, okay, so how does this setting affect this game? And how do the characters interact with each other? And I really love that gaming can do that today. That's especially important to me because I'm going to school to be an English teacher, so...
yeah, I mean, I agree a lot with that. As you mentioned, it's kind of... There were certain games from back then that kind of had that, but it's more... I guess there's more today than there were.
Today, I think it's number one that there are just more games available today. It's not just that we're getting like big releases. We also have a whole slew of indies you can look at, and virtually anybody can make games, and that it just gives us more games to choose from. But it's also that video games have become, such a lucrative market, and that we have big developers who are willing to take risks and write really big stories, I guess. I think the former point where people can just kind of make a game, right? Because you get a whole bunch of different people who have different perspectives and different backgrounds and different anything, and they kind of just want to make a game they want to make, and then they do, and usually it lets you get really diverse offerings.
Yeah, it does, because a lot of the time it's either something you're sort of familiar with or something that you've just never really seen this before, because nobody's really done it before, because nobody really felt the need to do it before.
And I think that there's a real opportunity to teach lessons and values, like not just in like Bible video games, which do exist, by the way. I see them on sale at Kmart all the time. Not that I go to Kmart all the time, but I have seen them in Kmart specifically. But like, I mean, going to the Kingdom Hearts series, at its core, it's about, friendship and, Disney values of like doing things for your friends and, helping people out. And that is a lesson that I don't think is lost on people. with Kingdom Hearts and with video games, that they do have that power to teach values to kids.
Hopefully from the right video game.
Yeah, no, I don't want somebody getting their moral code from Duke Nukem Forever or something. That would be bad. Yeah, and I mean, this can go badly. Like, you guys know that I kind of rag on the Assassin's Creed series, and I think that Assassin's Creed does have an opportunity to explore other cultures, but number one, they choose to keep going back to European cultures and American
like they
history.
recently had a release where they're going in they're in China, which was a neat. It's like it's a weird thing because it's not like a traditional Assassin's Creed. It's more of a. It's not a side scroller, but it's sort of like a side scroller.
Okay.
But it's more, but it is stealth at its core, at least, which is more I can say than most recent Assassin's Creed games. But yeah, like that's another thing. If we're speaking about culture, Assassin's Creed actually does a pretty neat job of that. At least with the Ezio trilogy was pretty neat of it learning of at least Renaissance Italy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it lets you interact kind of with the setting and the history there.
And the first Assassin's Creed with the taking place in kind of the Middle East during the Crusades was pretty interesting. And yeah, like, I mean, more recently, because as they're moving more and more towards the modern era, it gets kind of less, I don't want to say less interesting, but less, I guess, like, oh, this is something we haven't seen before. Because, like, the next one is supposed to take place in Victorian London, which I played a game that took place in Victoria, London. But yeah, like, those do play an interesting role, at least in teaching culture, because, as I mentioned, they did go to China. And they, in that particular line of games, they've already announced they were going to China, India, and Russia, which Russian history is actually something you don't hear that much about.
No, not at all.
Mostly because it's kind of stuck in a Soviet Union era and beyond. But yeah, it's interesting that they're at least exploring these different things in some capacity.
Oh, definitely. And I think that Assassin's Creed, as, you know, it's such a big series that they kind of can make a risky decision to set their game in, like, Russian history, which, you know, if a game came out about Russian history, people might not be that interested, but just because it's an Assassin's Creed game, again, I think that widens the audience and opens the audience to people who might not ordinarily pick up this game. And that's exciting to me. I'm trying to think of games that I played, like, as a kid that I would attribute to... being sort of educative. Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's always been kind of the Final Fantasy games, just because reading.
Yeah. Even that, though, they have, you know, kind of a resource management there. Not just, you know, like, handling money and buying potions and stuff, because, you know, to be honest, by, like, the middle point of a Final Fantasy game, you've kind of got so much money, like, there's more than you know what to do with the exception of Final Fantasy 13.
That is true. Yeah, I mean, it's weird, because, I mean, Final Fantasy also includes their own, like, mythological, like, hints. It's not explicit. It's kind of just like, hey, there's this. It's nothing that I would attribute to anything.
No.
But it's still, it's like, oh yeah.
It's interesting that they have their own lore, kind of.
No, it's not so much their own lore. It's more that, like, they were saying things that I thought they invented, but they didn't. Like they were like Odin. Like, for the longest time, I thought Odin was just a Final Fantasy thing. Oh. Because I first experienced Odin in a Final Fantasy game. Yeah, true. And then I learned that it's actual, like, oh, this is an actual mythological figure. Yeah. And
I mean, it's natural to draw allusions to mythology and borrow from mythology, and I think that that's what Final Fantasy is doing more so than a game like Never Alone, which is really about, like, celebrating and exploring that mythology, but still, that is a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that there is something to be said for the resource management too, though, that, like, in battle you have to be aware of, you know, like, how much MP you have, how much HP you have, what enemy is, like, vulnerable to anything. I learned from Pokemon that rubber repels electricity and that water conducts it, so I feel like my chances of getting electrocuted in this lifetime have decreased.
Good on you.
Yeah. And I also learn it when I go to flip the light switch on when I'm in the shower, but Pokemon really helped me.
It's been a marker in your
Oh yeah. I mean,
in your life history.
It also does teach you weird logic, like that. I guess no, the elemental stuff in Pokemon is pretty solid, like fire melts ice, but water puts fires out. Yeah, so Pokemon is solid. Pokemon is definitely going to save my life one of these days.
It teaches you how the elements react to each other.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody learned how the elements react to each other from Mega Man, or they'd be pretty screwed.
Yes. Oh, there was one weird one. There was one really weird one. I think it was in Mega Man 2 that was like, this doesn't really make sense, but okay.
I mean, they're all weird in Mega Man 2.
That is also true.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm trying to think of an example, but I'm drawing a blank.
I just came up with one that was like more resource management.
Go
and
ahead.
I lost it. Oh no,
okay.
Thrillville, like the roller coaster tycoon and the Thrillville. games.
Yes,
Like
that's
all
my
those-
game, man.
Yeah, I still have my PS2 Thrillville right behind me, actually. Because like those games, you actually have to run this amusement park. You get to build roller coasters and ride them and play mini games and stuff, but you actually have to split your resources and your funds between the different aspects of the park. You have to keep your customers happy. You have to maintain the place. You have to hire people. It's not just about playing cheerleading mini games for 6 hours. That's just
I mean,
the
that
box.
actually opens up the entire conversation about the simulation genre
Yes,
of games.
and The Sims.
Yeah.
Well, not so much The Sims, because
The Sims
While
is
you
not
can
a
learn-
real life simulation.
while you can learn some life like knowledge from The Sims.
It also teaches you that you can open up a cheat box and type in motherload, and then you don't have to have a job.
It also teaches you to be a very vengeful and cruel god.
Yeah, so I mean, there is that idea at heart of, you know, like, you have money, you have to work and get money, you have to fill your motives, you know, you have to shower every day, that kind of thing.
But yeah, the really into like technical sim type things, like
Dating
there are
sims that, you know, people respond well to getting presents and managing your relationship with your pigeon girlfriends or boyfriends, I guess.
But yeah, there's like a lot of I've gotten on like a kick of this because I've seen like a whole video series of these, but of like 1-to-1 realistic like aircraft simulators.
Okay.
Where you're thrown into a cockpit and there's like all these buttons and switches, and you have to go through this like 10-minute startup thing to even get your plane off the ground.
See, that to me is too stressful. Like, at that point, like, just go fly a real plane if you can handle that.
I know that's kind of almost the point to an
It
extent.
is actually kind of the point, because I believe that the Army is now using, or has been using for years, flight simulators to train their pilots.
This was kind of a Giant Bomb segment. It was called Flight Club, and they just opened up a bunch of different flying simulators for like specific planes. And like one of the people, they had a literal like written checklist of stuff they needed to do. And he kept binders of just steps that you would have to take in order to take off or to fly or to fire a gun or all this other stuff. And it is intense.
That's
but
actually
it is-
reminded me of this one really good Giant Bomb. I think it was a quick look that they did for like a truck simulator.
Oh, yeah.
That's one of my
Like,
favorites.
yeah, like you see that and it's with just, well, a truck. But then you expand that out into an actual plane and how
Yeah.
much more complicated a plane is.
Yeah.
And it's just like insane. A recent game that actually came out, which is also pretty neat, is Kerbal Space.
Oh yeah, Kerbal has been out for a while though.
It's a weird game. It's been kind of in early access for like 3 years.
Uh-huh.
It's probably one of the early access games that have kind of done right. But it just got its like 1.0 release
okay.
a week or two ago, and that is another one that is actually really, really interesting because you're building
Spaceships.
spaceships basically, but there is a lot that goes into launching spaceships
Yes.
and to traversing the galaxy.
Yeah.
Because they have this thing in there where they kind of you kind of have a trajectory, and you get to see that kind of like, you know, as you're going about it. But you have to, like, in order to escape the planet's gravitational pull, you have to wait until it's at a certain point in its altitude above I forgot what their planet's called, so I'll just call it the Earth. And then you need to time your rocket fuel, like your propulsion, just enough so that you're out of the Earth's gravitational pull and you're going towards the gravitational pull of another celestial object. And then you use that gravity to slingshot your way to the like planet you want to go to.
And not just that, but like that's all assuming that you get the rocket off the ground, because you have to build the rocket to be able to launch in the first place. And Yeah, that's really neat. And I think that could get kids interested in pursuing scientific careers too, which is really important to me, that video games kind of expose you to other worlds. Like, I know this kid, he was like the little brother of one of my friends in middle school, but he wanted to become an architect because he loved playing Sims so much and building houses. And that, something like Kerbal Space Program, it's teaching kids, like about science and NASA and everything. And that's really neat to get kids interested in that in an early age. And I don't think that any other medium really has that potential like video games do, because they let you actually like physically sit there and simulate it.
Yeah, like, I think actually the people who are behind Kerbal Space whatchamacallit program they actually made something for NASA. Kind of in like it was before their 1.0 launch, but after they've already kind of launched Kerbal in some capacity. So they actually made something for NASA as an education tool. And it's really neat. Like, I mean, in general, I am both like in awe and terrified of space, but like always finding this not something Kerbal taught me. It's just something I learned in school a while ago. But the day I learned that when you're going in space, you just don't do a like point at something and fire that way, but it is instead this intense thing of multiple mathematical equations to get your velocity and trajectory right. It was just like I couldn't handle that. Like,
Star Wars makes it look really easy.
Yeah, like it's just so weird that you have to use you launch and then you use the gravitational pull of different planets to slingshot you further, and then you need to time it up with other things to slingshot you even further.
This is why we just need mass relays. Like, science, please get on that. Just make Mass Effect reality.
There was that this is completely off topic from what we were talking about.
There was that like report that they like discovered the technology that can make mass relays.
Yeah, it was an EM something, and it's supposed to actually like speed things up to like 90% of light or something like that, which that is in itself insane, because it just cut down, like, I think one of the things they were talking about was like it was a few light years away, and it cut it down to like 90 years away, which I know 90 years sound like a lot, but that's kind of an insane amount of little time it takes now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I think that there is that element of video games, and just that they let you experience kind of a world that you might not have seen or heard about before. And I mean, this can be even done in small ways. Like, it doesn't have to be just like culturally or through science, but there's that indie game that was announced at, I don't remember which conference, but it was a couple months ago. It's I think it's called like Beyond Eyes, about the blind girl. Yeah, and that again is like this idea of like putting kids in a situation that they were not going to be in their lifetime, and teaching them, like, this is kind of not what it's like to be blind, because obviously that's not what it's like to be blind, but like these are some of the challenges that blind people do face, and exploring that story and exploring that disability. And I think that's really neat, and I love that video games are doing that. It can be taken to the flip side of negativity, that, like saying like, there's that whole, video games create violent kids thing, and I think that we all know that is mostly bullshit. But, it does have that idea of, like, as much as kids might be taking things away from games and learning really positive things, they might be absorbing negative values as well. Like we were saying with Duke Nukem Forever, that, I would not want somebody walking away from that game with those values. Call of Duty, there's that whole thing that, like, it's turning kids into warmongers and things. And, it remains to be seen how true all of that actually is. But I do think that we need to talk about some of the negative ramifications as well, that we can't just say, like, yeah, video games are great.
Yeah. I mean, kind of with anything, there's always a flip side.
Yes.
To, and, like...
overall, I think that we would all argue that the good outweighs the bad with video games, but... Yeah.
There's still a lot of areas where it can go bad or is bad right now, and...
Yeah, like with The Sims, that definitely did give me some unrealistic expectations for life. Like, if I stand in front of a mirror for long enough, my charisma and self-esteem will rise. Which is not true. And that, reading the same book over and over again will increase my skill points. That's not how reality works. The whole money thing is bad. Playing Need for Speed as a child definitely did affect my driving.
Yeah. you did Need for Speed. I did Burnout, which is a more...
Burnout is even worse. No, I played Burnout too.
Burnout is great.
Burnout is great, but Burnout...
But yeah.
You're kind of driving on the side of the road.
There is a whole mode in Burnout 3 where...
if I drove up this like huge truck and just caused an explosive accident... Burnout
there was a whole mode in Burnout 3 where the entire focus was to cause as much of a
that's the one I played.
Car collision mayhem as possible.
I destroy? I played Crazy Taxi as a kid.
Oh, God,
bad things can happen, especially with racing games. I think racing games are the worst.
Yeah, at least the ones that are just sort of trying to be arcadey.
Any racing game that's encouraging you to fly down the road at like 90 miles an hour, probably
because there are those racing games that are more down to earth, I guess you can say.
There's ones that put you on an actual racetrack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are probably better. I mean, even like Tony Hawk games, we were talking a little bit about Pro Skater 5 beforehand, I can fly down from the top of a building on a skateboard and totally wipe out and just be fine. That's not how life works.
Unrealistic expectations.
Not how life works. Yeah. But I think that video games do have really interesting potential, and I would be really excited to see them taken into classrooms more and more. And, as a future educator of America, I would love to let a kid do an assignment. Like I said, I'm going to school to be an English teacher. So, you write papers about books. And not saying that, we're just going to take books out of the curriculum and replace them with video games. But I would love to let a kid write about a video game and analyze it as you would a book. Because I think that there are a lot of games that are well poised for that. And I think that, a child is always going to put more effort into and therefore learn more from something that they care about. So if they can't find a book that they care about, I think that there's a book out there for everyone, but if they can't find a book that they care about, but there's a game that they're really passionate about, I would so much rather let them do the assignment about that and see where they go with it and see where they take it and let them look at this in a new light from an academic perspective. Because there is so much to see academically in video games. And not just from like a story perspective, but, looking at the gaming industry academically is something that a particular woman named Anita Sarkeesian was trying to do, and she got a lot of for it, to make a huge understatement, and I'm not okay with that. But, again, video games are this emerging medium that is really exciting, and I'm really excited to see it go all these places.
There is a lot of different areas that you could tackle. I mean, even if you just ignore like story and setting and all this other stuff, there is so much you can write just about how a game makes you think.
Oh, absolutely.
Just from a gameplay perspective, and how you there's a writer, Patrick Klepek, that kind of does that. Actually is one of the reasons why I kind of like watching him play Dark Souls and Bloodborne and games like that, because he analyzes like how he's playing and how the game reacts to him playing and how he thinks he should be approaching things.
Yeah.
And so just hearing, it's so interesting just hearing him think aloud about how, okay, this happened, so maybe I should try this, and maybe it's trying to tell me that I need to try doing this or that. And it's just, that in itself is just so interesting, because that starts going into less about how you kind of react to like a story and analyzing that, but it's going into kind of analyzing the game as well as yourself to some extent,
like how your mind works and how you approach these situations, and like then it becomes kind of psychological, and that's awesome. And
it reminds me of like people who play fighting games professionally.
Oh dear God, yes.
Yeah, they have to like analyze the other player and what they think they're gonna do, and know the mechanics of the game so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who kind of get insane on fighting games are amazing in for a lot of reasons.
Anybody who gets really good at one thing is just like incredible.
Yeah.
I wish I
like,
had
there's
like
this
one
guy,
thing I was really
there's
good
this
at.
guy, he was like he plays a lot of fighting games, and he's good at fighting games, but one in particular was one of the original Darkstalker games, which is a fighting game by Capcom, and it's one of those really old games that they didn't really have a training mode where you can have the AI do stuff.
Right.
So what he would do was just play two characters at once. And he basically had two fight sticks, and one of them was controlling one character and the other one was controlling the other character. And with one character, he was setting up things that he would try to counter. And that's just like I can't comprehend controlling two characters at once and trying to do these things when I have trouble just doing it just by myself. But
not just that, but like kind of in that vein, it's so crazy just how clever some gamers are. Like, I watch, sometimes I watch the shiny hunting videos on YouTube for Pokemon, and seeing how, like, people have, like, a bunch of, you know, Game Boys laid out, and how they kind of, like, control all of them at once. That's awesome. I love seeing how people like learn like, oh, you know, if I rubber band the controller like this, I can grind more easily, that kind of thing. I think that's really awesome. And then, you know, that goes on to like seeing people hack games and learn how to do that.
The entire speedrunning community is amazing. Like, not only from the dedication they have of trying to actually perform a speedrun, but for just all the exploits that they can find or they do find. And it's just like, what? There's a lot of there's a lot of games out there where the exploits are like, this is how, why? Like, there's just a lot of things where, I mean, obviously they find a lot of stuff when they kind of they extract the code and they look through it and do all this other stuff, and they just find like, oh, when I do this, values over here increase, or if I do this, they decrease over here. But there's just a lot of that, and then putting that into like, hey, look at us go through this game insanely quickly, or like even finding exploits like in Half-Life 2 is one that's always fun, is that they there used to be a way when you bunny hopped that you kept your if you timed it right, you kept your momentum, so you just kept on getting faster and faster and faster and faster. Valve patched that so that you, instead of increasing your speed, it created a negative speed to counteract it.
Oh boy.
So what people ended up doing is just they just started bunny hopping backwards, and that still got them the same result, but now it's a bit more difficult because you have to memorize, okay, this is behind me, I have to go this way. And it's insane because it's just something like that in Half-Life 2. That's just something, there's not really a speed limit on it. You just keep on increasing your speed, and it gets kind of crazy. I think
there was a speedrun that you were telling me about with the Kingdom Hearts series, Nick, where like they memorized like the random number generator from the game. Something like, maybe you remember better than me, but
yeah, I remember they were talking about some stuff, but one of them was that they were kind of manipulating they were manipulating the random number generator, but it's been a while, but I remember them, like, they had a specific move set that they did against one enemy, and then that would ensure that a enemy later down would follow a particular move set in kind of their movement and stuff like that. And stuff like that, that's just like, wow.
It's absolutely incredible that people figure out things like that and learn to exploit games like that. And I think that takes a special kind of mind. And I love seeing that applied to video games. And I mean, it can even be just something as simple as somebody like, I love video games and I want to get into a technical career and learn how to make video games. It's really awesome. Yeah.
Like me.
It's really, really neat. And I think that video games are so exciting for that reason, and that they have such a power, and they really are the most immersive form of media that we have today, because they do let you go ahead and interact with this thing. You know, it's not just with a book where you kind of lose yourself in the world there, but there is that barrier. With video games, they're crushing that barrier, especially now with like virtual reality and everything. It's getting thinner and thinner, and I love the way that people are starting to use it and take it like with Never Alone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Especially with VR on the horizon, that kind of opens up a whole nother type of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like that. VR in itself could be its own medium in a way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've talked about VR quite a lot on this podcast, kind of separated into its own episodes, so you guys know that I'm afraid of virtual reality, but I'm afraid of it because of how immersive it can be, and how that can maybe go negatively. But like we were saying with, you know, like video games as an educative tool, they can have negative ramifications, but it also can do some really cool and really neat, like, first-person things, and bringing you into it, like with virtual reality. So I'm afraid of it because of its power, but I'm also really excited to see how it can be used for good, I guess. Like, I mean, with Never Alone, how cool would it be to be able to put yourself into the setting of, like, the Alaskan tundra and seeing some of that simulated for yourself. Like, I know my sister is really into, like, the Northern Lights, and, like, she's obsessed with, like, Iceland and stuff. So I showed her Never Alone, and she doesn't really play video games, and she said, like, oh, I would really like to play this. And so that alone was pretty neat for me, but showing her, like, the Northern Lights, she's like, that's so cool to see it like this. I like the art style of this game, and it's really, really neat.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool things people can do
Yeah.
with kind of just, you give them something and they can usually make something great out of it.
Yeah.
Something else that I like with, like, gaming in relation to education is channels like Game Theory, where they'll take games and then do stuff with it. Like,
I'm not familiar with it. What is that?
It's
well,
does somebody else want to explain better than me?
I'll explain. I'll explain it. So Game Theory is run by this guy who calls himself MatPat. He takes these things that we all refer to as game logic and tries to analyze them using math and science and figure things out. Like for example, this is the first one I can think of. Like, would you survive a fall into a bale of hay from a high building like you do in Assassin's Creed?
Oh, so like
he takes
Mythbusters for video games, kind of.
exactly.
Okay.
Basically. And there's another one where they analyze Mario and some of Mario's, like, personality traits.
Oh, yeah,
And
and
say
then
that they have the traits of a
diagnose him.
psychopath or something. Like, stuff like that. And I think that's all really cool. Actually, one of the projects that I did for school, because I love teachers that are open to letting us relate stuff to things that aren't just books, like you were saying earlier, Misty, that's kind of becoming a thing now in my school. The teachers are way more open to letting us use other mediums other than just, like, books and movies and stuff.
Good.
So what I did is it was for religion, and I related Kingdom Hearts to Joseph in the Coat of Many Colors, because Joseph has 13 brothers, and there's 13 members of Organization 13, so that worked out well, and they're all wearing coats. And then everybody thinks Joseph is crazy because he's having all these dreams, and Roxas was having dreams of Sora, so to relate it that way was really cool, and I think that's good for kids and stuff like that, because they can relate it to other things in their life. And I got such a good mark on that project.
I mean, Kingdom Hearts does have some very overtly Christian themes in it. Like, I think you could do a lot in terms of, like, Sora as a Christ figure, and it has a lot of very overtly Christian things. But I mean, I think that's good. That, you know, it's teaching these things in just a different way that might be more interesting to kids, and it lets Cal use it as her school assignment, so... Yeah, I mean, that game theory thing does look sound really interesting, and I mean, yeah, it's just another way that, like, video games are being looked at as, you know, not just video games, and I love the idea of that.
It's unfortunate there's some people who don't love that idea.
Which doesn't, I mean, I get that people are skeptical of it, but, you know, people thought that books were ridiculous. Like, when the novel first became, like, a thing, when the novel was first starting out, people thought that they were trash, that there was nothing good in them, and, you know, you can kind of point to what some of the early novels were doing, and there's this great quote in Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen, where one of the characters calls novels, like, sad trash, because that's really what they were viewed as. But, you know, now novels are viewed as, like, these cultural artifacts and these things of great literary value, and that they speak to the human struggle and the human strife, and that we learn so much about ourselves and the world through them. And I feel like video games are kind of in that early time period now, where they're viewed as just, like, stupid entertainment and mindless entertainment, and I like to see them sort of transitioning into something more.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about video games is they need, like, such, I don't know, technology to be able to, you know, it's taken a really long time for them to be beyond pixels. So they need a lot of, like, developmental time. And I still kind of see them as a developing medium.
Oh, definitely.
Like, it's definitely true that, like, nowadays, now that we have things like VR, like you were just talking about, it's definitely getting, I think, taken more seriously now that people are like, oh, that's just, you know, kids play the Nintendo when they get home from school, whatever. But I think it's only fairly recently that they were kind of I don't know, they had enough development for people to start taking them more seriously. And that they had kind of like grown outside of their like niche, I guess, because for a while they weren't, you know, they weren't mainstream. And but I think now like we have so much more technology that they just have like a wider reach for people.
No, I agree, and I think that that's really neat to be able to witness that. And witness the transition that they are making. Because, you know, not everybody was alive to see, like, books transition into being what they are today and movies transition to be what they are today. But, you know, today we get to watch as video games become more and more respected as an artistic and an academic medium. And I love that.
It's one of the reasons why, this is getting onto a different subject, but it's one of the reasons why I am somewhat, I guess, upset. Not really upset, but kind of like bummed out that a lot of video game publishers are kind of against preserving old games.
Oh yeah, did you hear about that legal thing?
Yeah, it's just like there's a recent legal thing where the ESA, which is kind of the body of video game publishers in America, that it doesn't want anybody to either restore functionality of older video games in any way because it is associated with hacking, which is always associated with piracy. So we have a lot of stuff where servers are shut down or games just aren't supported or games are just in this weird legal limbo where the original copyright holder no longer exists, but nobody actually owns the copyright. Where it's sad that there are forces out there that don't want to preserve games.
That's
because
bullshit.
yes it is it is very much bullshit because it's and luckily there are people out there who don't give a crap about what they think and they do it anyway. But it's because of those people that we're probably going to actually have an archive of stuff that otherwise would have been lost, because I mean we've seen how careful people like Square are with their code.
Yeah, let's just throw it out and delete it all. We're never gonna need people fucking burying video games in the earth, which I still cannot believe that happens.
Well, that was a dark time, though.
Yeah, I mean that's not really about like the preservation of like great historical video games as much as
that was
like,
the video crash just taking everything out.
How the hell were you not shut down by like the EPA or something? But I mean, yeah, I do think that, you know, as history, we do have to preserve these things. That they're, you know, we have books from 3,000 years ago that we have to keep video games safe today.
Yeah, it's just a shame that the forces in power that would be like the ones who could enforce this are kind of like
and that is a symptom of capitalist culture, children.
And there's also the side where from an academic standpoint that there aren't a lot of, you know, people in an academic environment that like view video games as a cultural artifact.
Oh yeah.
That gets that starts getting hard, because then you only have a few people who are trying to push for like an archive or even just our copyright laws, that, you know, books are under a very unique copyright law where like after a certain amount of time they enter the public domain and then the copyright is like free. You know, you can get these books for free and it's there, it's accessible. You have certain laws about like how you can use these books and how you can reproduce them. There's fair use, and a lot of people are calling today for video games to get the same thing, especially with the fair use thing and how, you know, we share gaming media, how we record videos and put things about video games on the internet, that we do really need to address our copyright laws again as video games become in this emerging medium that they are. It's just sad. It's just sad that there are forces out there that don't want things to happen.
It's so disappointing. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, you guys know that I love arcade games.
Yes.
And, like, I don't know, I'm obsessed and I have a problem. But like, I guess I was super upset to hear that they were doing something like that, because like there are people who are dedicated to preserving those arcade games, and there's no other way like to keep a hold of something like that.
Arcade games specifically are kind of
especially arcade games, which are like, you know, you only had like a few hundred in circulation maybe for some of them, and they were just on these boards that fail after a while. Like the Capcom boards are notorious for some of the later Capcom games had those batteries for anti-piracy that just die and then the game doesn't work anymore. Like, that kind of thing. I just think it's just too bad that these people have worked really hard for like MAME and emulators like that, and like it's not like it's hurting anybody. It's not, nobody's losing money. I mean, most people are not losing money over that kind of thing. So I think it's so disappointing that, you know, it's being condemned by the people that should be like fronting the
the people that should at least be flattered that people want to preserve this.
Like, I mean, this is just coming from my mindset of where I back up everything and like multiple times, but it seems weird to me that a company wouldn't want a preservation type thing going on. Like,
you put all this work into this, you promoted this, you know, like, why do you not want to keep it safe?
I mean, I suppose they could have their own personal, you know, their own like company backup where they have their own like server that has all this stuff on it.
Sure, but like share that with everybody.
Yeah, it just like,
share
I don't know.
what you got.
But
Great Defiance Ohio album. Go on.
Sorry. Even the company backup thing, like, it doesn't really work, because, I mean, Kingdom Hearts is a great example of something that had a backup, and then there was a fire, and most of it was gone.
That's kind of not the case so much nowadays, because everything's kind of stored in a cloud.
Yeah, that's more the case of Square, your boneheads.
Yeah, I mean, that was also probably during an era where a cloud technology wasn't as prominent as kind of how things are going today.
Yeah.
See, that's the weird thing. It's that weird that's the weird talk about digital versus physical type things, where, you know, digital is hampered by stuff like what we're talking about now, how just kind of copyright stuff can impede it, but digital is also probably the only way where we'll actually have an archive of stuff that works, so long as the copyright laws kind of get out of the way.
Well, see, I went through a lot of technical networking training through like Cisco classes that were offered at my school. So I was always taught you have your local backup, you have a backup on a server in your area, and then you have an off-site networked backup. And that's like the best way to do it. So, and I think that that's how, you know, a lot of companies today are going to do, just, you know, as it gets easier, you know, you can buy a web server for nothing these days and have that as your personal cloud backup. And so yeah, it is getting better, but again, Kingdom Hearts was made in like 2000 when, you know, what is the cloud? When people were still using dial-up and it wasn't a weird thing. It's just that weird thing, because physical stuff will ultimately always deteriorate after a set period of time. Yeah.
And digital is kind of how you will preserve things, but there are things in the way that make digital not as good as it should be.
Yeah. Magnets.
Oh God. Yeah, I used to have some pretty powerful magnets near my computer before I knew kind of what that would do. And then nothing happened, thankfully enough, but it was like, oh, I should probably move these on the other side of my room.
Yeah.
Or not even my room, just on the other side of my desk. But
yeah. So video games are awesome is basically the point of this podcast episode. But, you know...
It's the point of every episode, really.
It really is. We just talk about video games all the time. But, yeah, so, you know, to kind of bring it back to Never Alone, I really recommend playing it. I think that, you know, even if you didn't get through PlayStation Plus, it's probably pretty cheap. You know, most indie games are like $15. And is it only available on the PlayStation 4?
I think it's on the Xbox One, and I know for sure it's on PC.
Okay.
So...
Yeah, so I really recommend checking out if you haven't played it yet, and if you want to learn more about Alaskan indigenous culture, or even if you want something kind of new and something that you haven't experienced before, which was really my impression in playing this game. I sat there and said to myself, I've never seen a game that committed itself so wholly to not just being a game, but also teaching me about this culture. And that's why I was so excited for it. And so, yeah, so talk to us about Never Alone, play Never Alone, and, you know, respect video games as a medium. You know, I'm sure if you listen to this podcast, you do, but encourage other people to, because, you know, like we were saying, a lot of people misunderstand video games as a medium, and we would really like to see that change.
Yeah, Never Alone is $15 on PlayStation Network right now.
Yeah.
So.
Which, I mean, for the length of the game, that's maybe not a lot, but you also have to keep in mind that it is a for-profit developer, but the money that you give them is going towards making more games like this. That the quote that I got, where is it? I have it here somewhere. Shares, celebrates, and extends culture. That you are supporting that culture by informing people about it and letting it live on and not die out. And that's really, really important to me.
Never Alone is a first game developed in collaboration with the, how do you say that? The Iñupiat?
Iñupiat? I don't know. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. With the Iñupiat and Alaska Native people, nearly 40 Alaska Native elders, storytellers, and community members contributed to the development of this game.
And there are some adorable old people on the cultural insights. They are precious.
Yeah, they if you go to their actual website, they have like a picture of each of the community members and stuff like that that kind of contributed to the game.
They're so cute. I love them. Yeah. Yep. So we can move along to user-submitted questions now. To submit a question to the KH-Vids podcast, all you have to do is fill out the form linked with every episode of the podcast or send an email to podcast@KH-Vids.net. The questions can be directed towards the host in particular or the group in general. So the first question comes from Quilligan, and he asks, and I thought that this was fitting with talking about Never Alone because this is a culturally fueled term. What do you believe is your spirit animal or animals?
I don't know. Like, I've never really thought about it.
Yeah, I will say that there is some criticism about this being like such, like a spirit animal because it is an element of Native American culture, but, we'll go with it. I think sloths, because sloth sleeps like 22 hours a day and just like sits around for the other two, and I feel that in my bones.
I was considering saying sloth, but like also I do like to do things on occasion. I don't. Also,
for
I'm
2
not
hours out of the day. Yeah.
I mean,
For me, it was funny this morning. This is before I read Cassie, your message about this being held at 1 today. I woke up at like 12:15, which was like 15 minutes after where we usually hold this. I was like, oh, Then I checked my phone. I didn't see a text message. So I'm like, oh, maybe something happened. and then
you realized that I replied to the group chat like at 10 a.m. today and then went back to sleep.
I noticed. Like, I looked at the time. I was like, why are you... Okay, whatever.
I am trying to adjust my sleeping schedule. It's gotten really bad, and I'm trying to fix it.
Mine is bad, and I know I should fix it. I am doing nothing to fix it.
It got really bad when I went to bed at 5:30 and sent my boyfriend a Snapchat before I went to bed, and then he replied 20 minutes later saying, I just woke up for school. And I felt really bad about myself, and that's what inspired me to change it.
Just to give you a look into what I was doing at 5:30 in the morning, I was finishing up playing Mass Effect 3 for the night, and I went to bed. I'm actually almost done with that game, which is awful because I started that game like 2 days ago. I made the conscious decision for this one that I wouldn't play the other DLC because I didn't really like Leviathan that much.
Oh, I loved Leviathan.
I did play Omega though because I actually liked Omega.
I haven't played Omega yet.
It's really great if you like Arya.
I recently discovered that she's voiced by Carrie-Anne Moss, so I like Arya now.
It was weird. So I'm playing through Mass Effect as a renegade Shepard this time. And so I was just kind of agreeing with everything Arya had to say during this. And at the very end of it, she just like, we're in the middle of a conversation or something. She pulls me towards her and just kisses me, and then like looks away and is saying like, "Okay, we're done here."
I need to play Omega.
Okay. I'm like, okay. You have to be on her good side though, because otherwise she's just kind of sour about you trying to change who she is.
That makes it very difficult. My spirit animal is being nice to people. But yeah, back to your guys' spirit animals. We can't all say a sloth because that would be disgusting.
What do you call a group of sloths?
Oh, that's a good question. I wonder if there is a term for that because there are weird terms in the animal kingdom.
A group of crows is a murder.
They're called bears.
Lethargy of sloths? I don't know.
A group of sloths is called bears, yeah.
Wow.
Bears, bed, or slumber, which all of those are perfect.
A slumber of sloths. That's actually kind of great. Yeah, I don't know. Like, for me personally, there's no animal that I associate myself with.
I think I might just actually be cheap and say a cat, because I can relate to sitting around and just glaring at people all day until I need something. And I can also relate to just being a total jerk half the time. So yeah.
Blowbermow from Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. It's like a Meow Wow, but it's, I don't know, it has flowers on it. I guess that's me. If I have to pick an actual animal, though, I guess I'll say a dolphin, but my first answer was the flowery Meow Wow from 3D. So, there we go.
Oh my god, a group of mice is called a mischief. That's
That is great.
amazing.
That's adorable.
That is great.
A group of owls is called Parliament.
Yeah, I knew that one, actually. I knew that
Yeah.
one.
A group of parrots, Pandemonium.
My grandparents had a parrot when I was a little kid, and I hated that parrot because it bit my finger. But it also
Stop.
started being...
A group of rattlesnakes is a Roomba. Raven's unkindness, storytelling. What the Sorry, Nick.
Okay,
I like
so
that you-
there has to be somebody who is just either making the shit
This
up
has
as they
to be
go.
bullshit. Salamanders, Congress.
I mean, that's so fitting for
It
us,
is.
though. No, but a group of cats is called the Clouder.
Okay, Lexi, what is your spirit?
What did you say was the one for Roombas? Maybe I'm
Rattlesnakes.
I think I'll go with that just because I like Roombas so much. I really don't know, though.
Okay. All right, next question is from Graxy, and he asks, if headphones, what do water wheels and flapjacks do?
Wait, what?
If headphones, what do water wheels and flapjacks do? I felt like this might be a good question to ask because Lexi is here and she plays like Monkey Island and this seems like something that would be in Monkey Island.
If headphones?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm back into just looking up words for animals. A group of squirrels is called a scurry.
That's just going to be the rest of the podcast.
It might be.
Did you know a group of monkeys can be called a cartload or a barrel? Like, the barrel's cute, but cartload, man.
But yeah, I don't know headphone. I'm not sure what headphones is a head.
Yeah, like how do you head a phone?
I'm wondering, like, there's this puzzle in Monkey Island 2 where, like, they would hold up, like, a few fingers and be like, if this is, like, 3, then what is this? And they would just, like, hold up a different number of fingers, and it would be the same answer.
That's
So maybe
very
they
weird.
all headphone.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I mean, it's, again, adventure game logic. So,
What was it again?
if headphones, what do water wheels and flapjacks do?
I guess flapjacks, Jacks.
Yeah.
and water wheels, water them wheels, though.
Well, see,
I don't
water
know.
wheels isn't following because the other two have, like, head and flap as a verb in there, but water is a noun, and wheels is, I guess it can be a verb, but it also can be a noun. So, I don't know. Let's move on.
I like how a duck has 3 different names for it, depending on if it's on land, water, or air.
Now, the next question is also from Graxy, and it is, your bedroom door has been locked with an audio passcode. The passcode happens to be Darth Vader's first line in Return of the Jedi. What does he say?
I'm gonna be locked in my room for the rest of my life.
Well, my
Go ahead.
room has a computer in it, so
Yeah, so,
I actually don't know, though.
you do know?
I don't.
Oh, I'm thinking.
I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Return of the Jedi opens with Darth
Oh, it's
Vader.
been so long since I've seen Return of the Jedi.
I know. I never watch Return of the Jedi. Like, in terms of Star Wars movies that I watch the least, it's like Phantom Menace, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, I would agree with that, actually.
Yeah, I have problems with Return of the Jedi, but moving on. I know that Return of the Jedi opens, Darth Vader's first scene is, I think, the opening scene with him on the Death Star talking to one of the commanders about how the Emperor isn't happy with how the new Death Star is progressing and like how quickly it's going, that he wants them to pick up the pace, basically. So Darth Vader never greets people very well. He usually just like sasses them with his first line and then says like, you better hurry the f*** up or I'm gonna be choking you to death. So I'm guessing it's something like that where he says, you know, like, your lack of faith disturbs me, that kind of thing. So like a line like that, probably. I don't know exactly. Does somebody want to look it up?
I'm looking up right now.
See how close I am? I'm trying to remember if this is... Because I always confuse this scene with the one in Empire, because the one in Empire cracks me up because he talks to this guy and force chokes this commander, and then there's just this other guy standing, like, inches away from him, and Vader just, like, turns around and the guy is just there. I'm pretty sure that's the one in Empire. So the one in Return of the Jedi is probably... Is this the one where he tells him, like, that they don't need to talk about pleasantries or something? He says
yeah. I'm seeing, you may dispense with the pleasantries, Commander. I'm here to put you back on schedule.
I got close. Damn. Damn
On another
straight.
On a completely different note, a group of bears can be called the sloth.
Yeah. Okay, so we will move along to community news and projects, of which we really don't have any, but I figure I'll mention this now, even though it was supposed to be kind of a secret surprise. I don't know if it was supposed to be a secret surprise. Yeah. But for
we'll
E3, for E3, we usually do podcast episodes covering, like, what happened at E3. And, I mean, we have fun with them, and they're always good episodes, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them, but...
There's something wrong with them.
We also have a lot of fun just, like, watching the events live and kind of sassing everything that goes on with them. So we wanted to do some kind of live coverage for E3. We wanted to do it last year, but obviously we didn't. So we're trying again this year. So our idea was that we would be streaming during E3, and we would have, like, a stream of the major conferences and the events and everything. But we would have, you know, us sitting there on webcam talking about it and... you know, kind of reacting to everything that goes on there. And we would stream it to our Twitch channel and have it be like a KH-Vids podcast special. So your podcast peeps would be there. And then we would also have our staff guests popping in throughout the day. And yeah, so we would just want to know if you guys are, like, interested in watching that, I guess. Because, you know, we don't want to be sitting there doing that to, like, no viewers. And, you know, we would like to have viewers to interact with, you know, by, like, through the Twitch chat and everything. So... I mean, that's the basic idea. It's hard to, like, explain something like this, and... It's
almost like a visual live podcast.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, so you can, you know, see our faces, and, you know, we'll be going in and out throughout the day, because, you know, it would be hard. I mean, me and Nick will be sitting there all day doing it, but I figure other people will be popping in and out. And so it'll just be, like, a fun way, I guess, to watch E3. I don't know how many people actually watch E3. I'm hoping a lot, but, yeah. So that's
if anything,
the basic idea.
They'd be there for us.
Yeah, so. Yeah. So, you know, we'll be doing entertaining things. If E3 gets boring, maybe we'll play some games and that kind of thing.
So, I mean, there's also the fun of bingo.
Yes,
like, make your
E3
own board
bingo.
and watch.
Yeah, we'll be playing E3 bingo, you know, all of that. So we think that it'll be a lot of fun. So if you guys are interested in watching this, definitely do, like, leave us a comment letting us know. And yeah. I mean, we're probably going to do it either way, but I want to know if anybody is saying, like, yes, I will definitely be there. So RSVP if you can.
Yes, RSVP to this free digital event.
It's very exclusive, you know? Yeah. So that's the basic idea of what we're kind of putting out there for E3. So definitely let us know if you're interested. I don't have any other community news. If you guys have something, go ahead.
No.
Great.
I work hard, damn it.
Yeah.
Top 5 comes back this summer.
Yay! Would you like to explain what the top 5 is for some of our listeners, like seeing?
Yeah, okay, so during the summer, it's a weekly video contest where you can submit, like, AMVs, parodies, whatever, as long as it's Kingdom Hearts related or, like, Disney or The World Ends With You, that kind of thing.
Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy. You just submit during the summer. You submit to our portal, and it is automatically entered. And then we every week we judge the videos, and, like, the winners get put on our homepage. So you get, like, your video promoted, and you get a pin out of it, which is nice. And then the rest of the year we have seasonals, which are like themed top 5 contests that come once every season. We didn't have one in spring this year.
There's still time left in spring.
There's still time to do it. Yeah, we might do it. I didn't get a chance to do it with school. It was a disaster at the end of the year. But they're just themed contests, and you have 2 weeks to make a video based on the theme that we give you, and then you turn it in, and then a week later we judge them and put them on the homepage. So be on the lookout for that. We're definitely interested in seeing any videos that you guys put together. It's always so cool to see what people put together. So yeah, it's pretty simple, but very fun.
So participate in that if you like to make Kingdom Hearts videos and put them on KingdomHeartsVids.net.
Please do.
That's the place to do it.
Yep.
It's your legacy.
Anything else we want to say, or... Okay, so there are a lot of ways to participate in the KH-Vids podcast, and we would love you to do all of them. Like I said, you can submit a question to the KH-Vids podcast by filling out the form links with every episode of the podcast or sending an email to podcast@KH-Vids.net. You can submit to be a member guest to the KH-Vids podcast, once again, by filling out the form links with every episode of the podcast. All you need is a Skype account, a microphone, and headphones, and we would love to have you. And of course, you can submit a topic to the KH-Vids podcast by filling out the form linked in the sticky in the podcast section. Tell us what you want to hear us talk about. Give us a suggestion so that we don't have to make up topics every week because it gets difficult. And finally, you can of course just leave us a comment on podcast threads. Tell us what you thought about the episode, what we said, and answer our user submitted questions. I can almost guarantee that I will reply back to you because I like replying back to people, and actually I have to do it for the last 2 podcast threads because I'm a piece of garbage. But yeah, so please do participate with us, interact with the KH-Vids podcast, and have a Kingdom Hearts day.